Flowering plants are a delight to look at when in full bloom. Do you know what role flowers play in these plants? Let's find out. Flowers are the reproductive units of flowering plants. They have male and female reproductive parts, that is stamens and carpels. Flowers that have both stamens and carpels are bisexual. Unisexual flowers have either stamens or carpels. Now, let's look at the role of flowers in reproduction. In a flower, the anther produces pollen grains that contain the male gamete. Inside each mature pollen grain are two nuclei, the tube nucleus and the generative nucleus. These nuclei participate in the reproduction process. The ovary of a flower produces ovules that contain the egg cell or the female gamete. Out of the 8 nuclei in an ovule, the polar nuclei and the egg cell participate in the reproduction process. For reproduction to take place, a pollen grain must first reach the stigma of a flower. The process through which a pollen grain is transferred from the anther to the stigma of the flower is called pollination. When pollen is transferred from the stamen of one flower to the stigma of a flower on a different plant, it is called cross-pollination. When pollination occurs within the same flower or in another flower of the same plant, it is called self-pollination. It is important to note that pollination always occurs between plants belonging to the same species. After a pollen grain has reached the stigma of the correct plant, a pollen tube grows out of the pollen grain and makes its way through the stigma to the ovary. The generative nucleus in the pollen grain divides to form 2 sperm nuclei. The 2 sperm nuclei move through the pollen tube and enter the ovule through the micropyle, a tiny opening in the ovule. One sperm nucleus fuses with the egg cell to form the zygote. The other sperm nucleus fuses with the polar nuclei of the ovule to form the endosperm nucleus. This completes the process of double fertilization. After fertilization, the ovary grows into the fruit. The ovule transforms into the seed. A seed contains the endosperm, a nutrition storage tissue formed from the endosperm nucleus.